So apparently Ubisoft had the good sense to go and cancel an Assassin's Creed game. According to GameFiles.news, a website I've never heard of, so as I said, take what they say with a grain of salt. Scoop, Ubisoft canceled a post-Civil War Assassin's Creed last year. Company leadership deemed the project too controversial for the moment, sources tell GameFile. So this article is written by Stephen Totilo, and I don't know much about the guy, so I went and did some Googling around. And he certainly is a games journalist, for what it's worth. Apparently he worked over at MTV News from 2005 to 2009. And then he worked at Kotaku for roughly 12 years and 2 months. So take all that into consideration as I go through this article. Now, my personal thoughts on the Assassin's Creed series is that it is a game franchise that is past its prime, really kind of peaking with the second series of games, which focused around Ezio Auditore, which is probably, I would say, the best character in the Assassin's Creed series to date. So everything else past, I would say, Assassin's Creed, was it Brotherhood, I think was the last one, just basically started going downhill. 3 was serviceable, and I really did enjoy Black Flag, but after that, I didn't care for Origins, and that's really when I dropped out of the franchise. I think the prospect of a Assassin's Creed game set during post-Civil War is actually a pretty interesting idea. However, the problem is we live in the world where identity politics have gone and infested everything when it comes to entertainment, and I'm pretty sure that the nuance of this topics that will be explored will have the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Now, I'm not going to go and cover everything in this article, but I'm going to go and basically hit a few of the first paragraphs here, as well as some other highlights. Now, this is a Substack, so it is behind a paywall if you want to go read the entire article. I thought it was kind of interesting, but whether they truly deserve your money or not remains up to you. In July of last year, word began to trickle through Ubisoft an ambitious new installment of the company's top franchise, Assassin's Creed, was canceled. The new game would have brought the history-spanning series to one of its most modern settings, the American Civil War, and more so, the Reconstruction period that followed the 1860s to the 1870s. In this Reconstruction era Assassin's Creed game, gamers would play as a black man who was formerly enslaved in the South and moved west to start a new life. Recruited by the series' assassins, he would return to the South to fight for justice in a conflict that would, among other things, see him confront the emergence of the Ku Klux Klan. And like I said, this game would probably have the subtlety of a sledgehammer because it would be more focused on identity politics than interesting things that are happening during that time period. Hell, we can look at Red Dead Redemption 2, where Arthur does go and confront the Klan in the game. And it was fine. It wasn't the primary focus of the game itself. It was one aspect, and it covered a lot of other topics that were happening during that time period, which is completely fine. But you gotta have subtlety to it. The issue is that the very reason why this game was canceled is the very reason why it should not be made to begin with. And to a certain degree, if the game is good, I would say gamers are willing to overlook certain things, even if it is pushing the message a bit too hard. But the problem is, these games suck. I played Assassin's Creed Shadows, and the Yasuke controversy aside, the game was boring as fuck. That's according to interviews with 5 current and former Ubisoft employees who spoke to GameFile on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak about the project. Ubisoft did not respond to requests for comment for this story. And because there is nothing verifiable from Ubisoft at this time, that's the reason why I say take this story with a pinch of salt. I don't know if this is actually true or not, but it's an interesting story nonetheless. People were enthusiastic about the game, but were frustrated by its cancellation, which they perceived as Ubisoft bowing to controversy. Or maybe Ubisoft read the room after the announcement of Assassin's Creed Shadows and the fact that in that game you were going to play a black samurai rather than a Japanese samurai, a novel concept. But sure, bowing to controversy. I think they realized that this game was going to struggle, And to this day, I don't even know if we know the actual numbers for Assassin's Creed Shadows. I mean, they kept announcing that it was like millions of players were playing this game, but they didn't say anything about physical copies being sold or digital copies for that. So during that time period, maybe they read the room and said, yeah, let's wait on this one a little bit. Will this actually see the light of day? You never can tell. But I seriously doubt it at this point. 3 sources told GameFile that word filtered through the company last July that management in Paris stopped development of the game for 2 reasons. The first one is online backlash that spring, that's a really weird way of phrasing it, spring to reveal of Yasuke, a historically inspired black samurai, as a protagonist in the company's then upcoming Assassin's Creed Shadows, and 2, concerns that political climate in the United States was becoming increasingly tense. Too political in a country too unstable to make it short. One familiar with the game and its cancellation told GameFile. And with Ubisoft, we kind of have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is how many units of Assassin's Creed Shadows was actually sold. And again, if you take a look here, the AI overview is trying to tell you that it sold between 2.4 and 3.4 million copies in the first few minutes, which is actually inaccurate. Because as you can see in the image here where it says 3 million players, and this is what the official Assassin's Creed count was posting on Twitter. It wasn't saying units sold. It was that we had X number of millions of players. And even here in the AI summary, you can see the fact that they talk about how the game actually underperformed. And let's say, just to give them the benefit of the doubt, that they actually did sell 3.4 million copies. And the game itself cost $350 million. That is nowhere near the break-even point. I'm pretty sure this game lost well over $100 million because the amount of units sold, somebody's going to be taking a cut, whether it's a store or it's Game Pass or whatever. So they're not getting that full amount. So they are far from the 350 mark. Okay, so we have 3.4 million copies sold, allegedly. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take the average price of $69.99, and that comes out to $237 million, which falls very short of how much this game actually cost. So based off those numbers I just threw out to you, this game is nowhere near a meteoric success that the game's journalists and as well as Ubisoft painted this game to be. And it's probably a wise decision that they are not moving forward with this game. Now, my speculation is that they probably paused it, and they're waiting for the reaction of basically Assassin's Creed Shadows, which it just didn't perform as well as they thought it was going to be. So personally, I think the financial viability of this game was really the reason why they canceled it and not because of politics. Okay, from here on, I'm just going to go and hit the highlights, but the main thing I want to point out is that according to this article, the game was in its concept phase, so it really hadn't really gotten anywhere yet. And this doesn't mean that they can't go and resurrect it later on. Now, the sentence I have highlighted really kind of illustrates everything I think is going to be wrong with, I would say, Ubisoft moving forward, or games like this. Its distinct setting excited a number of Ubisoft developers who felt the game might be able to make a positive social impact. When it comes to any form of entertainment, gaming included, people want to be, entertained. Your number one job is to entertain people, not to preach to them. And that's the reason why entertainment is in such a state that it is currently, is because they forgot what was the most important thing about entertainment: entertaining people. One person involved in the project said the game was meant to show how radical tensions can be manipulated as a means to control society, a valuable subject to explore in the current moment. But the concept, they believe, came to be viewed by management as too politically sensitive, dooming the project mid-2024. I think that the negative reaction to Assassin's Creed Shadows certainly did play into the cancellation of this game, because it is about financial viability of your game. If you're going to go and piss off half your audience and no one's going to go and buy it, yeah, that's a problem. Bad decisions were made, and just going and creating something because it aligns with your ideology and is not going to be profitable is fucking retarded. Ubisoft would never explicitly say if the attack hurt Shadow's commercial performance, if they dragged down pre-orders in mid-2024, for example. But a year later, in June 2025, the company added bashing to its list of risks faced by the corporation. It defines bashing as a massive, sometimes virulent, and organized campaign of criticism against its product. Okay, methinks that Ubisoft is beginning to deflect here. The problem here is what they're going to do. Rather than take responsibility and accountability for their poor decisions, they're going to blame the audience. This is typical stuff that we see in current year when it comes to entertainment massively failing. Apparently, the word criticism is now being replaced as bashing. And again, it's to go and deflect away from the fact that they are not owning their failures and are being criticized as a result. This is literally the personification of the Principal Skinner meme.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
Risk to the company from bashing, Ubisoft said, could include drops in sales, loss of player trust, and an increase in costs related to crisis management, content moderation, or the redesign of disputed game elements. Ideology is a hell of a drug, and all they have to do is just make a game that people want to play. I know it sounds easier said than done, but when it comes to injecting identity politics and all the current year-isms into entertainment, you're going to cause yourself more problems than it's worth because you're going to go and piss off your old fan base while not attracting the very people that you're trying to attract to your game. One source who spoke to GameFile about the canceled Reconstruction game had wished it continued but said it was hard to separate its fate from the context of Ubisoft's economic woes. The Ubisoft at the moment was going to inherently be more risk-adverse than Ubisoft of years prior. Clearly, they have learned nothing from their past failures. Okay, before I hit the highlighted point, I want to get this summation really quick. It says, since its inception, Assassin's Creed has been one of the game industry's most thematically daring franchises. When it comes down to it, I don't consider Assassin's Creed to be thematically daring. I just found the initial one to be fun, despite finding Altair a bit boring compared to Ezio Auditore. But, I still enjoyed the game and I wanted to play the sequels as a result of that. And every game after that, to a certain point, was just an improvement over what we got previously until we hit the downward spiral. Okay, so they highlight in 2007 that the player-controlled Altair, which is a Syrian assassin. I'm not sure why that's considered to be revolutionary, but whatever. And then Assassin's Creed 3, that was released in 2012, featured a Native American assassin, and they had some criticisms about the Founding Fathers. Okay, and again, none of these were issues. They were fine, and the reason why is because they weren't heavy-handed about it. And a lot of my problems that stem from Assassin's Creed 3 is my same issues I had with Assassin's Creed 1. The protagonist I felt was flat and boring. The stuff that happened during the game, I really didn't have much of an issue with. I just didn't like Connor as a character. I didn't find him to be as compelling as Ezio. In 2012, you had Assassin's Creed Liberation, which was DLC, I guess, for Assassin's Creed 3. Never played it, so I don't know much about it, but apparently the character goes and passes as a slave in Louisiana. And then in 2013, there's Freedom Cry, which is, I guess, the DLC for Black Flag. Now, I haven't played it, so I can't really give you my thoughts on it. And I'll be honest with you, I don't recall any controversy around these DLCs, and it was probably because it was handled with a lot more nuance than what we're seeing today coming out of entertainment. Given the body of work, news of the Reconstruction game's cancellation hit some Ubisoft workers hard, at a moment when they felt the series and the games their teams made could most effectively make an impact. They saw a retreat by the people in charge. And yet again, we are seeing the highlights of their failure, which is the focus on activism rather than going and entertaining people. This is the problem with modern day entertainment, is that they put everything first, typically activism, before telling a compelling story. And that's the reason why people don't want to watch movies or TV shows or play certain video games coming from certain companies that put activism first. I was terribly disappointed but not surprised by leadership. One source told GameFile, they are making more and more decisions to maintain the political status quo and take no stand, no risks, even creative. Now, personally, I find the total lack of self-awareness to be absolutely hilarious. At least management is seeing what's going on. They are pissing off their customers and therefore losing money as a result. But the employers are like, you know what? We need to continue down this path of failure. Well, the thing is, this person will most likely not have a job in the future as a result of continuing on the path they've been going, which is pissing off the people who buy your video games. The person added, leadership decisions impact developers, creative ambitions, and motivations. To a certain degree, as a developer, I understand the reaction of this employee. I really do. In reality, you're paid to do a job, and sometimes your feedback and input is simply not going to be taken into consideration. I've been there, I've done that. That's just the reality. So you move on and do your frickin' job. And if you don't like it, you find a different one. That's what you do. In a call to investors that September, Guillemot addressed the backlash against the company's game and made it clear Ubisoft did not want its games to be divisive. But you did. You know that. But you did. You know that going and setting a game in Japan and then having the main protagonist be a black samurai was going to be divisive. Let's be honest here. You knew this was done because of identity politics. We are an entertainment-first company. Well, it sure doesn't come off that way because the products you've been making have not been that entertaining lately, now have they? Creating games for the broadest possible audience, and our goal is not to push a specific agenda. Methinks you're full of shit. We remain committed to creating games for fans and players that everyone can enjoy. All right, and that's basically all I'm going to talk about with the article. The rest of it is really just like some comments from Reddit talking about, you know, a Civil War or post-Civil War setting for Assassin's Creed. Now, the question is that a good time period for Assassin's Creed? I personally think it could be, depending on how the subject matter is handled. If they're focusing more on the message and it's just white man bad, then you have a stinker on your hands. If they go and focus on the nuance of that time period and the things that were going on and showing both sides, good and bad, then you could have a potentially interesting game. The problem is that's not what they're going to do. They're going to focus more on identity politics and focusing on more one side being bad because they're white people, I guess. And the game will just flop like so many others at this point that have gone and wrecked them because of either Sweet Baby Inc. or just injecting identity politics into their video game or name entertainment franchise at this point. Anyway, folks, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Leave a comment down below. Hit that thumbs up, like button, whatever you want to call it. If you enjoyed this video, if you're new to the channel and you want to see more of my content, make sure to go and subscribe. And remember, folks, freedom is always on the right side of history. I'll catch you next time.